Almost everything I have in my life is a mini. My Mac is a mini, my iPhone is an iPhone 16, a smaller version compared to 16 Pro Max, and even my camera is a mini Sony one. Now, my tablet is an iPad 7 mini. During my years of using compact products, I found there are usually some compromises made in building them. That said, I still pick them because for one, they are often cheaper, and for two, they are portable, which is perfect for me since everything should fit in a small bag when traveling with my bike. I also plan to use the tablet for teaching since I teach UX design at university. Since most people see the iPad mini 7 as more of a workhorse, I decided to take a different approach in this review. I'll focus on tests for display brightness, jelly effect, battery life, thermals, and the device usability with the Apple Pencil Pro. Starting with the display, the aspect ratio is perfect for multiple things. It is a nice size to hold for reading books and can work as a Kindle. A big bezel is also okay because you can hold it one-handed while walking without touching the screen. The device is almost 1.5 times larger than the iPhone 16 Pro Max and is roughly one-third of a MacBook 14-inch. For note-taking, the aspect ratio is nice if you are, for example, a doctor and you want to write something real quick and something to fit your big pocket. But if, like me, you want to use it on a desk for UX design, it can be a bit restrictive. The display's colors are excellent and accurate, which is very important for artists and photographers. You can see it next to the iPhone 16 Pro Max and iPhone 16 playing HDR content. I just noticed that blacks and whites are not as deep. It is because the technology is LCD with back panels rather than OLED on new phones. You can easily edit your photos on the iPad mini. I do use Adobe Lightroom here often. Regarding brightness, the display does not get as bright as I wish it to. The problem is that I plan my cycling trip during summer, and for me, it is important to have a bright enough display. You can again check it next to the iPhone 16 outdoors. This can also be a bit of a problem for pilots who want to use it for navigation, and there may be direct sun on the tablet. On the other hand, when the screen gets too bright, the battery life will be affected, and the tablet can get hot. The jelly effect is another concern for folks out there since iPad mini 6 had that, and it does happen because one side of the screen refreshed slower than the other. I did several tests to make sure that the effect did not exist. First, I scrolled vertically, and as you can see in the slow motion, there was no jelly effect, and all the lines appeared, well, like a line. If you look at it horizontally, the same observation. There is no jelly effect on the screen. I also ran the jelly effect test. Basically, we are looking at whether the lines are parallel or not. And as you can see by yourself, the lines are parallel in portrait mode, and there is no jelly effect. Here I pause the video so you can see more clearly that the lines are parallel and not tilted. I did the same test again with a different orientation. The lines are parallel, and there is no jelly effect. So it seems Apple solves the issue. Most likely it has something to do with the panel itself, and even though the screen is the same, they somehow managed to fix it. Staying on display, it is still 60Hz if you use it as static, and by that I mean if you don't plan to scroll on it for applications like Kindle, note-taking and so on, or watching YouTube, it is gonna be alright. But if you scroll through web or maps, you do notice a bit stuttering. Also, 60Hz is gonna help preserve battery life. Regarding battery life, I did a battery test. I turned all of them on at midnight to start watching YouTube at the same resolution. And I ran YouTube for pretty much the whole night. In the middle of the night, I woke up, probably due to neighbors' kids screaming, and I checked the temperature. Interestingly, the iPad mini 7 was hotter than the other two, which is rather surprising since a bigger form factor usually results in a better cooling system. The thermals are nothing alarming because they ran YouTube for hours. Also, the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro Max have the best thermals I've seen on a phone. To be exact, the iPad reached 33 degrees Celsius, which is 91 Fahrenheit. By the end of the test, which was 5.5 hours of running YouTube non-stop, the iPad reached 5% and turned on the power saving mode, while the iPhone 16 Pro Max had 79% and the iPhone 16 had 77% battery left. This is not surprising since phones are extremely efficient these days, and they are running on a smaller screen with a more efficient one, and an even more efficient A18 chipset, which helps them preserve battery life. Also, their phone screens are OLED, which consumes less battery. So on Wi-Fi, I would say you can watch YouTube for around 6 to 8 hours before the battery runs out on your iPad on a typical brightness indoors. I should also note that Apple advertises 10 hours of battery life, but that is only video playback on 150 nits brightness. My test included a Wi-Fi connection, plus the brightness was set to 400 nits. I also charged the iPad from 5% to 100%, and it took around 2 hours. The charging speed is 20 watts. I put the link of the charger I use in the description. Talking about the chipsets, they put a downgraded A17 Pro and 8GB of RAM to run Apple Intelligence. Honestly, I'm not sure if we get that in Europe anytime soon, but for regions that can get it soon, this device is the cheapest device that can run it. A17 Pro is slightly weaker than A18, which you can find on the iPhone 16 series. I ran a 3D Mark stress test first. This test ran a loop 20 times to check the performance of the graphical unit. It is also a nice test to check the thermals of the device. Towards the end of the test, the iPad mini 7 was surprisingly cooler than the phones. As you can see, it got to 40 degrees max temperature, while the iPhone 16 got to 41 and 16 Pro Max got to 43. That would be 104, 105, and 109 degrees Fahrenheit. When we look at the results, we can see that iPad mini is only slightly lower than the iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Pro Max, and you won't notice it when you are gaming or doing daily activities. What you may notice though is this drop in frame rate, which is not good news. As you can see on the iPad, the frames dropped as low as 11 and did not show great stability. For the CPU test, I ran GeekBench, which tests the CPU performance. In this test from multi-core, the iPad mini 7 got 7300, which is 15% lower than the iPhone 16 Pro Max and 14% lower than the iPhone 16. Again, no one will notice the difference in daily life, and the device is pretty fast. If you look at the back of the device, there is one camera. No one will probably use it other than taking picture of receipts or scanning a QR code. But for the sake of it, I took some photos to compare to iPhone 16 as a reference point. The quality is visibly lower than the iPhone 16, but at the same time, it does the job. The colors, white balance, and dynamic range match the tone of the iPhone. Also interestingly, you can do 4K 60 frames per second video recording on this device. The quality is not the best though. You can see clear jittering and the flare is handled very poorly. On the other hand, the colors are very consistent to what you get from Apple products, which is great. The selfie camera on the iPad may be more important since we all have video calls these days. I'm not going to put that into the test with the mic. So one thing that I noticed is that iPad only supports HD and not 4K on the selfie mode. There is HD 30 and 60 frames per second. Of course, iPhone 16 supports both of them and also 4K. Also the mic test. The left is of course the iPad and the right is the iPhone. Let's see how the mic sounds like. You can't use the old Apple Pencil 2 with iPad mini anymore. You must get an Apple Pencil Pro or USB-C. There are some nice features that Apple Pencil Pro offers. For example, you can squeeze it to pop up different options. You can double tap on it against different controls. You can also hover instead of touching the screen and use it to select modes and do different things. In general, it was a pleasant experience and I'm happy that the new iPad supports it, but it would have been better if it were backward compatible. Another things I like about the iPad mini is the speaker, which is very loud compared to the iPhone speaker. This makes sense since they have more space to put the better one. There is still no Face ID on this device, and you should use the fingerprint scanner on the power button, which works very well for me. As I said, compromises were made to make this iPad a mini form factor and to keep the price low. Overall, this is an incremental upgrade from the iPad mini 6. The jelly effect is gone, and the chipset, RAM, and internal storage are being upgraded, which makes this device ready for Apple Intelligence. There is a new Apple Pencil Pro support, and all the good things including a relatively affordable price, nice speaker, and a perfect form factor are there. On the other hand, some issues are not being addressed and are being compromised, such as a 60Hz display, the low brightness display, and the lack of Face ID. Other than that, it is yet another powerhouse mini tablet. If you have iPad mini 6 and the jelly effect does not bother you, there are not many reasons to upgrade. But if you are new to the iPad game, mini 7 would be a nice choice. You can also check the other reviews about Apple products on this channel. Thanks for tuning into TechMo, and I will see you in the next one.